We'll open the organizational meeting, Moose Lake City Council, Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is approval of our reorganizational agenda. So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have anything under the consent agenda. You have public comment time here. Is there any input from the public? Hearing none, we'll go down to, I have nothing under departmental reports at this time. Nothing under previously discussed business. Does the council have anything? Hearing none, we'll go down to the sixth new business, which is the committee and board appointments. And I'll start reading down through them. Maybe we'll get down through the official city newspaper and do that approval, and then we'll start down to the committees. The city attorney is Flattery and Hood. City engineer, Matt Wolf, SEH. City finance advisor, Northland Securities. Bond counsel, Kennedy and Graven, chartered. City attorney, Clifton Larson Allen. City funds depository, First National Bank, Moose Lake. Official city newspaper, Star Gazette. Any questions or discussion on those first items? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Moving down into the planning commission, there is one person who time was up, and that was Keith, and he did say he would like to be on the planning commission.
He's on water and light.
Right. The water and light will have to approve it, but he would like to stay on it, and we'll discuss that again at the following meeting. The Economic Development Authority, Terry Burns and Steve Olson, both their time is up. And during the contact, they both like to stay. Zoning administrator right now is Tim Peterson, that should be Katie Moon. So please note that. Housing and Redevelopment Authority, Sharon Hoppy and Alice Miller and Barb Isaacson, their time were shown two from 2018 and 119. I don't know.
Yeah, everybody would like to come back.
Okay. So with those items, is there any discussion or question on those four committees?
Just in practice, do we notify the public, or is it just a rubber stamp, or how are we gonna handle that moving forward?
Generally, we've only posted when we have
A vacancy?
a vacancy. We can certainly post for all of them if you would like, but.
I don't want to create an issue, I just want to make sure that we're consistent moving forward is all. If that's what we've done, I'm fine with
Can I have a motion to accept those appointments?
Well, hold on one second. We can do all of those as one. There's more groups on the second page. Do you want to do counselors right now as well, or not?
So we go down through, we go all the way down through, right to below, or right above the city officials, office officials. So moving on to Parks and Recreational Board, Ross Stewart, Barney Hollis, Gray Nolene, Lowell Urban, and they all want to stay on the committee. We have the Library Board, Eleanor Eskery, her time, and she has been contacted and would like to stay on. Cemetery Board, Wayne Peterson, and he would like to stay on it. Also, we have to add Mike Peterson. We added him on last year. He asked to be on it, and I think we approved it, so that's just a correction for how we did it. Public Utilities Commission, I'm completing Mike Peterson's position. So that's why there's no selection this year. I guess I got another year on it. It's 3 years, Greg, you were on this. It's a 3-year appointment. It's 3 years. And the fire district is Walt Lauer. Do we have any questions or discussion on any of those committees or boards? Do you have a motion to accept those appointments?
I would just say that if you wanted to change any of the city councilors, I would do it before you make a motion to approve the committees and commissions and boards and all
Are you
that.
talking about the city officers and officials down below?
Well, like the planning commission has you and Councilor Jundin, economic development has Councilor Jundin and Councilor Sarvala. Any of those can be changed right now as well, if anybody wants.
We'll just go down through all of them then, because they can all be done then at the end. City officers and officials, Mayor Pro Temp, Chris, you'd
Oh,
like
I'm
to
going
stay?
to step down.
You gonna step down?
Yeah.
Do we have a counselor who would like to fill that position?
I guess I will, if either the other council.
Very good. Moving on to, great weed and tree inspector, Chris, you want to step into that? Okay, I guess I'm there. Safety officer, Phil Edner. Waste management director, Phil Edner. Building official inspector, Andrew Sharp, Township and Range. Animal control officer, Moose Lake Police Department. Board of Health, Gateway Clinic physicians. Emergency preparedness, myself. Cable television public access coordinator, Rory Buckmans. Under the city council committees, municipal liquor store, Doug Jutman, Greg Sarva, both wish to stay.
Yes.
Police protection, Chris Huso.
Like I said, I don't know if there's a need for that. We haven't had meetings, they generally are just with the city administrator, so I'm not sure that is a necessary committee.
This would be an issue, an agenda item, do you want? So we'll leave that and make the motion, and we'll have to be left out to see if we want to discontinue that. Administrative committee, Chris Huso and myself. Chris?
Container.
Cable Television Commission and Communications Technology Committee, myself. Chamber of Commerce, myself and Walt Lauer. Minnesota Department of Corrections Advisory Committee, myself and Chris Huso. Chris, you're still, thank you. Active Living Coalition, myself and Doug Jutman. Doug, are you still?
Yeah, a little less meetings on that one would be good.
Say that
A
again.
little less meetings if we could do that one. We haven't met yet, I don't think, so.
I don't know what that one's for.
I don't either. Is it necessary by statute or?
I don't think so. Did you start one when maybe the Safe Routes to School stuff was being reviewed maybe?
This has been on there since I've been the mayor for 15 years.
How many meetings have you attended?
I don't know, Doug, how many have we
All
had?
of them.
I mean, I would say.
We could look
take-
into that one
take
to see
that
if
one.
there's a reason. I don't know. No.
It would be tough to call a meeting for that one. I don't know what it is.
We're both alive, I guess. We're gonna. Isn't that funny how you keep doing things year after year until someone questions it? So I guess it's a good question. City administration and department directors, city administrator, city clerk treasurer, should be Katie Bloom, interim. Deputy clerk finance director, Katie Bloom. Electronic fund transaction designation, that should just be Katie Bloom. Public works superintendent, Phil Etner. Chief of police, right now we have Bryce, and so that should be changed to interim Mike. Municipal liquor store manager, Elaine Vinegar. Library director, Shelby Loney, am I pronouncing that? Argentin?
I don't
Destroyed it.
think any of that was right.
I don't think
Shelby.
so. Shelby was good.
Yep.
Motor vehicle deputy register, Karen Deline. Do we have any more on the next page? We don't. Do we have any questions or discussion on any of those committees or offices?
Don't want to discuss the police.
Except for the police protection. So motion? So moved. Does that have a second?
Second.
And that will be leaving out the police protection
And then
active living coalition until we make a decision on those.
So just to be clear, everyone's good on all of the rest of the, wherever they're at? Okay. Cool. That was Sarla and who was the second?
I guess that was me.
Okay. Except for police protection.
Yeah.
And active living coalition.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Back to the agenda.
Are we just removing those two committees then?
Well, they'll have
Is that
to
what
go,
happened?
they'll have to go back onto the agenda, regular
Okay.
agenda that we discussed.
Okay.
So when we get to that, we'll do an addition onto the agenda that we have.
Okay.
We have nothing under reports and correspondence. Check that. Announcements, non-adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn the reorganizational meeting.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, we're adjourned. Okay, I'd like to open the regular meeting, Moose Lake City Council for Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. And we've already done the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to welcome all the people that are here tonight. The first item would be the approval of the agenda, and I have two additions to two committees under new business. This would be F. One would be the police protection. And the last was the living, what's it called? Active living code. Do you have any more additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the consent agenda, 2A1, we have the December 11th, 2019 City Council regular meeting minutes, and number 2, the January 3rd, 2020 special meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion or questions on those minutes? Hearing none? Have the motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving down to 2B, number 1, City Council payable for December 2019. Under B2, we have the city financial statements for December 2019. And number 3, the liquor store profit and loss statement for December 2019. Any questions or discussion on the financial reports? And I think you got everything out on time, Katie, everything you needed to be.
Barely on time.
Thank you. Hearing no comments or questions, we have a motion to accept the financial reports. So, have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carried. Under public comment, this time is reserved for comments from the public on matters not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Do you want to speak to us, sir?
I just wanted to visit with you guys again. I'm still at squeaky wheel.
No problem.
It's been another year. I'm still measuring my water. Phil and I have talked regularly. Kind of disappointed in some of the decisions that were made this year as far as what was spent on certain items. I don't know the shape of the only one that comes right off the top of my head this year was the air conditioning system. As far as I knew, it was working. My water main isn't always. Really just want to be at squeaky wheels and given the opportunity even to give the customer the ability to fix something, I can't even fix it without the city council or the city authorizing me to dig up the street. So every day when the weather gets cold, I'm worried if I wake up in the morning, I have a training that I'm supposed to go to in March and I'm afraid to go because I don't want my house main freezing up. And that's unacceptable. I don't know how else to say it. If there's anything I can do to make this move forward or actually fix something or something to that effect, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to help out. My understanding is the decision to not give the customer the opportunity to do an assessment, or I apologize if my words weren't correct right now, to get things fixed. Did we get anything done on that? I believe it was 67 items to repair in the streets. Did we do any of that?
No, not as yet. There may be some items that Phil had to take care of, but not any of the big projects have not moved forward yet.
But we've got
It's still funding any problems.
And we've got air conditioning. And we hooked up cabins. The seasonal cabin. Those are the two that pop into my head all the time, just for us. I understand having air conditioning, and it's one of the things that I pay for at my house. I get it. I have it in my work office area too, not everywhere.
You know, last year you made it very clear to us, and we're all well aware of your situation.
Just want to keep it
You
in
made
the
it
forefront, because nothing changed.
Perfectly clear.
So,
Actually, sir, it did change. If you went to came in and talked to us, we went to use the infrastructure piece. I don't think that was necessarily part of it.
Okay.
So we did use that, and that did change some of the things, but unfortunately, our first project is $1.5 million, the number one project. And the project that where you're at is still further down the list. So yeah, if we could think outside the box, or you come up with things outside the box,
Well,
try to figure that out. But it is not on.
it's
the
good to hear
highest
that it
list.
hasn't been forgotten. That is the
No.
true reason I'm here. I'm not asking you to prioritize differently because I'm not running the city. I am asking you to reconsider your priorities because that's my right as a homeowner. to hear that actually something is moving, that's excellent. I appreciate that. I'm not asking to repair a whole street, I'm asking for a 6 by 12 foot section. I could actually show you where the asphalt or bituminous, if we're gonna be politically correct, is actually breaking loose and separating. I never did receive the actual quote of the repairs. We threw a number out that was rather fictitious back in the winter because that's what we do in the winter this time of year, I get it. But the whole summer later, I never received another word. So that's truly what I'm trying to do. So thank you for giving me something back. That was basically it.
We appreciate you coming forward and speaking to us. We do need to hear, remind us of things that are out there. Believe me, we have not forgotten that road, and it's come up in discussion, and we're well aware of it.
And I'll be back
It'll keep
for the same reason.
It'll keep us on top of that. Thank
Not
you.
because I like to pick on you guys, but that's.
It's understandable. It's totally understandable, so.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor, Mr. Peterson, can you give her a second? Thank you, sir, for a job well done. It's been appreciated, the work you've done for the city of Moose Lake. This is a little something that we'd like to present you with. This is from the city council in the city of Moose Lake. Present to Tim Peterson, thank you for your outstanding and dedicated service, Moose Lake City Council. Good luck.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We hope that's okay with the moose.
That's fine.
Moving on, are there any other comments from the public? Hearing none, and thank you, sir, for being here again. Departmental reports, 4A, the police chief department report for December 2019.
Mayor, council, in the package you should have the report for the calls from December 1st through December 31st. Also, I believe Katie didn't get into the packet, but she should have made you a print off of our overall year. For 2019, from January 1st to December 31st, we had 2,049 calls. They're all broken down there individually for you to look back on. We did the Blue Santa Cops for Kids program this year, what used to be the Shop for the Cop. And with the donations and the help from everybody in the community, we were able to help 38 kids and 14 different families this year. It was really perceived well, and a lot of people donated to it financially as well as with toys. We delivered to, I think there's 3 families that we had to actually bring stuff to because they didn't have transportation or the means to get here to get it. Otherwise, everybody else came here on the 31st, and we did a Christmas thing here. We had Santa Claus here, and he handed out all the presents to all the kids and took pictures with them, and it was a nice night. They're very well appreciative, and they were very thankful. So, and to everybody that did participate in that and donate, I just want to thank, because it was huge support this year. Ray Kuchar started full-time with us. He's been doing a fantastic job for us. He's definitely added benefit for the department. Currently working on 3 felony theft cases and 1 felony burglary case within the city. It's staying plenty to do. But that's about it, otherwise, unless you have any other questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Good job, and please pass it on to the group. Appreciate it. Public Works Superintendent report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, very busy month, plowing snow, ice removal, that kind of thing, everything. All the things that people hate about winter. So, get after it here quick. Water department, we did distribute 3.9 million gallons drinking water. That's pretty average from where we sit typically. That number will start climbing as the frost depths go deeper and people start running their water. Sewer department collection system collected 12.5 million gallons of wastewater in the month of December. Treatment system, we did have a December discharge for us this year. That is very uncommon for us. We had a lot of I&I. Noticing just after this rain slop mess that we had, our influent pumping was up to about 600,000 a day, that's a summer number. So to see that in December, January, that's crazy. So we're as far as discharging the ponds, the wastewater treatment plant, that's fine. We're sitting pretty good there for winter now. Due to that extra discharge, we did miss our phosphorus limit for 2019, which is understandable from the BCA standpoint with the I&I and everything else. So, street department, like I mentioned, ice and snow, a lot of compaction out there. There's a lot of areas that are slick. There's a lot of areas that are rough. I get it. I understand. I wish I had a way to make it go away cheaply, but I don't, because salt is extremely expensive right now. It's about $87 a ton. And for example, the other day, I think we put out almost 55 ton in a day, in like a 4-hour stint in the morning. So it's extremely expensive. So we try to make the best out of that and make it go as long as we can and as far as we can, because obviously we all know there's an abundance of money. A couple extra things here. Snowplow safety. You see a truck floating around here plowing snow, just stay back, slow down, watch it, because we back up frequently. We did have a couple of close calls here this last month. Luckily, there were no accidents, injuries, or anything like that, but we were quite close. One other reminder: frozen water and sewer line policy. Please read it. It's on the city website. I have copies of it. City Hall has copies of it. Please look into it. If you have questions, please contact me, City Hall, anyone. We don't like this as much as you don't like being underwater. Just a reminder, it is the responsibility of the property owner or the resident to monitor their own water temperature to avoid freezing situations. And then one more thing, frost depths are currently between 2.5 to 3.5 feet deep. We do have some water main that is buried at 48 inches, so it's getting down there. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your job on that too. Please pass it on to the group. Moving on to 4C Technology Library Report, Rory.
Yeah, Rory's going to come out here and present, and it will be on this packet that was on your table.
You should have copies there of, I think I presented once or twice about the upgrading of our equipment so that we can move out of our 5-disc DVD player into an electronic upload type of system so that our programming can be a lot more variety versus 5 discs playing over and over, and then we'll have the capability of being able to schedule different things, different days, different times of the days. We will also have a digital messaging system available on both channels, so in between programming on channel 18, which is the content that's recorded, we also would be able to put a schedule on there of what's upcoming on the next programming and things like that. So we'll have a lot more capability, and I guess kind of bringing it up to nowadays standards. I am planning on trying to connect with Hibbing. Hibbing's got a system with equipment of what we're looking at doing here. They're much bigger, but I am going to try to take a swing up there and look at what they've got. What I did was broke this down into where there could be possibly two phases. Phase one is basically all the equipment needed to be able to get into our electronic scheduling, electronic upload. Phase two is basically the online portion and the streaming portion. So for instance, these city council meetings could be streamed live right onto our server. So instead of having to load them onto YouTube, they would be available video on demand on our own server that would be part of our city channel, which that's what most of the towns do. They also obviously have like school board meetings and things like that, which I'm hoping, I've been hounding the school to start recording their meetings. I know some of the neighboring, Barnum is doing it now as far as the school board, so I'm hoping that Moose Lake will do the same kind of thing so that we can kind of host some of that stuff right on our own server instead of having to put everything out there on YouTube. So on the breakdown there on the phase, you can see the phase one, phase two. I also did talk with AVI then on financial arrangement, because now we finally have the monies that are to be dedicated kind of towards the cable available. So I didn't have the exact amount of money, but I was figuring that about that 26.5 being available on a yearly basis, that if we I had this Vantage Financial is one financial company that does work with AVI quite a bit with technology equipment, which is a little bit of a particular type of business, being that basically the technology equipment goes obsolete fairly quickly. But what we're looking at, especially on the hardware end, is as equipment that would be out only since last April. So it is fairly new in that sense of it, and so I guess we're kind of coming into it at the newest. It's just like buying a computer. I mean, is there going to be something newer? Yeah, but you just wait and wait and wait, So I mean, we would be jumping in at equipment that would be available to us, kind of the newest of what's available. This Vantage Financial is just one option. I mean, I know Tim had mentioned too that, it's probably a possibility we could do the same kind of thing with, a local lender, to still be able to use that same pocket of money that's coming from the cable, so that it wouldn't affect, the budget anyplace else, that we could kind of carry it over into that third year, would actually get us the whole system. So I guess we could roll it all into one and do it that way. I mean, that would be the easiest as far as setting up. Otherwise, we could take and do it into the two phases, which would be getting the first stuff set up, and then trying to get the online and the video on demand portion of it. The other thing I included just in the notes is, as far as the maintenance, I mean, there is I believe a 1 year and a 3-year warranty that's part of 3 years on the software, or 1 year on the software and 3 years on the hardware. They would offer additional, so that we'd be covered 5 years on both. There would be an option too. Otherwise, we could do that as the time. Like I said, we would be covered to start with, and we could always get into that maintenance agreement after, which I think we would almost have to in there again to keep up to date software and things, and they would then support us so that we could keep things running, and they would also supply training, obviously. So it'd be a fairly good size switch around, because all the what we're using on the digital system now, as far as the slides and things, would all be a whole different system. I'm hoping that we could take some of that content and be able to save it somewhere. We'd have to recreate But there again, the capability of what we're gonna be able to do, and I think I had mentioned before too, that what the capability we'll have with that, with the digital messaging system is like for some of the groups, like the school, and I've already talked to, but of course now some people have changed there, but as far as having somebody at the school that would be able to log in and change their slide per se, so that we could have a school slide on there that would be hopefully current, for sure weekly, you know, if not more so of what events are happening at school and things like that. I also talked to Augustana. They're very interested in doing the same kind of thing, the depot. So I think the key would be to get some of these different groups being able to put content on there too that would be real up to date, you know, and changing kind of thing of events of what's happening. Hospitals, same thing, you know, as far as community events that they host and things like that. So it'd be a matter of setting up, you know, a person from each of those groups that, you know, it still would kind of come through our main, it wouldn't just go on there, but it would have to get the okay, but basically they would be able to do all the content without having to send stuff to us to create kind of thing. So I think that's a big thing too, as far as trying to get a system here that's, you know, like say up to date and you know, able to provide, you know, content from community-wide.
Maybe Tim, you could
Yes.
explain on the funding, where it comes from and how it can only be spent.
Sure. So in, I believe, February this year, our final payment on the cameras, and then we will be complete. So we have, annually, we have money that comes from MediaCom for the franchise fee that needs to be utilized for the public access television, and upgrades to equipment is certainly one of those things. Even when Steve was here, I think that we've had a lot of issues with the technology that we have. It's old. It's old to the point where it's difficult to find replacements, which is one of the problems, I think. One of the largest problems that we're having now is that it's as outdated as it can be, so we can't replace what we have in there. This will allow us to kind of jump way ahead to where technology is today. If we want to go all the way back, quite frankly, I think this solves the problems that Bill has brought up as well. This is an opportunity to kind of do what Bill was looking to do in more of a today's world kind of a way. With Bill, there was maybe some additional infrastructure that was needed with fiber and things like that. This kind of makes it into today's world where you don't necessarily need to be connected into everything. So I think this still solves and goes back to what Bill had originally wanted and presented a number of times. As far as the funding goes, we have about $28,000 that's dedicated to cable TV expenses. And it's listed under one line item because quite frankly, we haven't been able to utilize the money for anything other than the lease that we have now. This year, we will have the availability of most all of that money. Like I said, February is the last payment. So this would kind of fit into then moving forward and changing up the equipment that we have. I do think that we would be able to make these payments. This is kind of what Rory and I talked about, was spreading this out over 3 years and keeping it under the budget that we have. We wouldn't need to increase the budget for the next 3 years. We'd be able to just pay for this, and then after 3 years, own it. The other option, like you talked about, is potentially just going down to the bank and getting a loan. We used Northland Financial to do that with our last road project. We went down and just took out a loan from the bank, basically. So it's kind of up to you how you want to handle this. It's a large amount of money, but if we can spread it out over 3 years, it frankly just fits right into the budget that we have.
I think it fits into the emergency response initiative that was started many years ago that never was completed. This kind of solves all those.
Well, and really that streaming aspect, that live streaming aspect can be done remotely too. So I mean, yeah, it does open up the possibility of being able to, you know, stream live onto our server from any location. Of course, then, you know, equipment wise, to be able to do it remotely like that, but I mean, it definitely does step into the next step of where technology is now, and really, like I say, to be honest, I mean, where we're sitting now is like having a VHS player at your home, I mean, how many have that anymore and are using that? I mean, that's kind of puts it in the realm of kind of how far off we are, and by bringing it up as close as we can, like there again, it's just like a new computer. I mean, you can bring it to where it is right now, but I think by being into a maintenance agreement where, we can keep on top of that stuff, I'm pretty confident that with the hardware being as new as it is, that's not gonna change a whole lot, because that's kind of what we ended up with the problem with the digital messaging system that we have right now. That went out of date to the point where there's no hardware available, so we ended up, the one that we had at the city here quit working. I was able to get the one from down at the hockey arena that they weren't using anymore, and be able to reprogram that to make it work here. But I searched their company, and they searched their shelves, and basically they didn't have any other hardware. So that's worked for us right now. But if that was to happen again, we're kind of out of luck again. But there again, that system to what we could do with this new one is going to be so much greater. I think taking us into the future, and then being able to definitely push the content. The little bit that I poked around, like at the, healthcare center and some of the senior high rises, what I come to realize is actually people that are relying on the cable public access, a lot of them are not online. So their connection with the community is really what's coming through the cable, and it's not we're not talking a huge audience, but what we are talking about are people that are relying on kind of cable to keep that connection with the community. So I think that's, and I didn't really think much about it either until you start really looking at the dynamics of who some of those folks are. So, I think it's pretty important to, and the thing is, if we bring it up to date, then we can just make everything better, more content, the possibilities just expand greatly,
Okay, so I guess we're looking at the council for an approval to finally have this funds back available again, and it can only be spent on the public access area. So we're looking at the final approval and looking at the finance mechanism.
You can approve this with what's presented, or you can approve basically having Katie talk to our financial advisors about finding the best funding source. I don't know if this is the best one or not. This is just
right. And I asked ABI, I said, is there somebody you work with? This one happens to be, I said, who locally? They've worked with like Cloquet School, I guess, for quite a number of years. They do kind of specialize in the technology end of a little bit, because he knows, because he said, if you have to switch and go with a different piece of equipment, he says, no big deal, that they're real flexible in how they, on how they work it. And then after I had talked to you, Tim, I said, well, what about making just an annual payment? He said, yeah, not a problem. So that's kind of how then he revised it, instead of a monthly thing, he just revised it, so it's kind of a 1 a year, and that's why I told me to kind of stay under that number or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there might be something better, and I even told him, I said that, we probably are gonna check, locally or whatever too, if there's other options, but I just said that I wanted them to be on board, so if that's the way we go, that we kind of have a little bit of a plan there,
So if you, at the very least, if you have Katie look into that, it gives you a month to think about this rather than deciding on $70,000 worth of stuff right now. I will say the money needs to be spent on public access television anyways, so it's
Dedicated.
it's really not that big of a stretch to do it, so.
So maybe open up to the council for discussion.
We just received this tonight. It's the first I've seen it, and past practice has been that we've always waited a month once we've received information. So at bare minimum, that would give Katie time to look at other financial possibilities as far as money lending.
That just gets us close to the final payment also
February.
in the cameras, so that's very reasonable for, and we should be able to make a decision next month on this.
And I think the contract, I mean, it shouldn't vary very much. I mean, I think this is good till whatever. I mean, they probably would just have to rewrite it. I know I've had them do it 3 different times, and actually, some of it actually went down a little because they've kind of combined their digital messaging system with some other stuff, so it's switched around a little bit. I think they looked at the racks that we have in there and thought better that they would put it all on a new rack, so then that upped it. So it's kind of, you know, jumped around a little, but basically it stayed kind of in that neighborhood for what we're talking about.
And after Katie's look, we may realize that this is the best deal to go with them because of their technology background.
That's,
So
yeah,
that-
yeah, and like I say, I didn't have a chance. I thought, well, at least if I get this and we have something to base it on, and we have the option of being able to finance it so we can still stay within budget and make everything work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to 4D. Oh, excuse me, before I go on, is there anything from the library? Any report?
I don't think you guys met last month, did you?
From library, no.
I think they took that month off.
Okay, so nothing from the library. Moving on then to 4D, city engineer.
Starting on page 35 are the minutes from the meeting. The largest topic of that meeting we're going to talk about under previously discussed. So I think if you have any questions on the minutes, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just move on from now.
Okay, moving on to 4E, Chamber of Commerce updates. I don't think we have anybody here representing the chamber.
I think the only thing I would say is Ice Bocce is coming up soon. If you're interested in Ice Bocce, contact the chamber to find out when it is and get your team ready to go.
Any questions from the council? With that, we'll move on to number 6, previously discussed business, well and well house project presentation.
For that, we'll turn it over to SEH to present all kinds of good stuff.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, I'm Matt Balf. Mark Wallace, my colleague, is here tonight, and we're both going to talk about the project. First of all, thanks for having us. Thank you for the reappointment. We have enjoyed being your city engineer. Thank you, Tim. I can't say I'll miss you because I'll probably work with you in Cloquet, where I also do a lot of work. So, but tonight we wanted to come. There should be a brief agenda outline in your packet. But we had prepared, per your previous direction, preliminary engineering report for the replacement of your well 1 and 2 and your well house. So the report is quite lengthy. Tim and the mayor asked that we come in and give kind of a brief overview of what is in that report. And then also we have a quick summary of what the proposed cost of construction and our fees are, so there can be a discussion about an overall project and what bonding might look like for this project. So with that, I think Mark and I will get started here. I'll maybe let you start a little bit, Mark, on the background, and I can point to the board as needed.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as Matt said, this project's been in the works for a while. This was kind of, goes back at least till 2016 when the city performed a wastewater review of the condition of the infrastructure, and this project was identified as one of the higher priority items of evaluating what to do with wells 1 and 2 because the wells are getting old toward the end of their life, and the pump house, the building that houses the pumping equipment and chemical feed equipment is in need of a lot of repairs. So The purpose of our preliminary engineering report was to pick up from that 2016 report and bring things forward, review alternatives, and come up with some recommended plan of action. So as far as the existing condition, the city of Moose Lake does have 2 water supply wells that they're located in the campground area on 4th and Birch in that general area. And those were drilled in 1946 and 1955. So again, for that type of well, a screened drift aquifer well, they are reaching the end of their useful life. The city has a pretty robust program of regularly inspecting the wells and doing minor work on them. Last year, one of the well pumps was replaced. But those wells, according to your well driller and some work they did in 2016, they're due for some major rehabilitation of the screen and cleaning of the screen. They're due for some major work. The condition of the existing pump house, it's old. It does not, which is not bad just because it's old, but it doesn't meet functionally. It doesn't meet the modern electrical codes. All the electrical gear is out of date and needs to be replaced. And quite frankly, finding places to put new gear and to rehabilitate the existing building is a challenge. And architecturally, roofing and tuck pointing and all of those types of things that an old building needs. So that's the existing condition. The alternatives considered, we reviewed, we did a reasonably thorough analysis of what it would take to rehabilitate what you have, both the wells and the pump house, and compared that to constructing new facilities, so drilling new wells and building a new pumping facility. And we'll talk about this recommended project in a second. One of the first things we looked at when we were talking about the potential of new wells was finding a suitable site for the new wells. We were looking for locations where there would be, number one, where the city could own the property. Number two, where there might be a reasonable chance of locating a high capacity well with decent water quality. And so we looked generally in that same campground area. We looked at moving just over a little bit in the campground, but obviously the existing campground area is full of mature trees. It's a high value property. There's the existing driveway or roadway into the campground was there, so there's just a lot of challenges of trying to drill new wells and build a new building in that area. So we found out about the parcel, the former school parcel that was available and the city now owns. So that is where we ended up with the recommended site for the build new alternative. So after comparing the costs and the relative difficulty of trying to rehabilitate your existing building while you keep it in service, if you can picture this, not only was it expensive to completely redo your existing pump house, you'd have to try and do that work while you kept it in service. So you'd have to temporary wire lights and power for the well and work around everything. And it just was very difficult. So the recommended project includes a number of items. So 2 new wells. The reason we picked 2 new wells is the standards for water system are to have a backup well. So you have one well, they call that firm capacity. So you're always set with one well, and then you have one well for backup if the well is down for maintenance. The capacity we would match your existing wells, 400 gallons per minute. And then the new pumping facility, as I said, would be a little bit bigger than your existing pumping facility. We had some sketches of the floor plan. We spent a lot of time working with city staff to determine a functional building that had spaces, proper spaces for maintenance of the equipment and safety of the workers, separate areas for the chemical feed areas, and those types of things. So as far as what the building would look like, we, again, after talking through the alternatives with city staff, we're proposing a robust commercial style concrete masonry unit, a concrete block building with, kind of built to commercial standards, but with residential features on it, so it would have the siding, so everything would match the neighborhood. So it would essentially be a commercial building, but it would make it look like a residential building to fit in the neighborhood with a shingled roof and a pitched roof and all of that. There's some work that goes along with that. Because we've moved over a little bit, we need to connect that new pumping facility into the water system. So there's some water piping connections on 4th and Birch that are included. Part of our work related to this preliminary engineering report involved putting together a hydraulic computer model of your water distribution system so that we could evaluate the option of essentially someday eliminating the use of the booster station. Right now you pump your water twice to get it up to the water tower, once from the wells and then it's pumped again from your booster station. And without going into all the hydraulic details of it, doing the modeling, we could find a way to eliminate that. So, that does involve some related work out in the distribution system. So you have these pressure reducing valves out in the distribution system located, one's located near the depot, one's over by the water tower, and one's inside the booster station. So there would be some ancillary work that would be to adjust those, modify those structures also.
Why don't I just take 1 second here, Mark, before we
Yeah.
move on? So just so we're all familiar, your existing well and well house is here. This is one of the areas that Mark said already said we looked at because of the mature trees, because of the use that it is. We really didn't want to go in there and disturb that. This site, which the city now owns, has an existing garage on it. I believe the city is looking at having that relocated here in the very near future. But what we've settled on as of right now is 2 new wells on that site. And there are spacing requirements for the wells, how close they can be to each other, private property, other things. So we can't just go put a well anywhere. There's a very kind of narrow window of where if you go here or here, otherwise it moves even further away. And a new driveway access off of 4th Street. Driveway, parking, and then the ability to back a truck up to the door should someday we have to replace pumps or equipment. You can back in a truck right there at the well house. General layout looks like that. And then Mark had mentioned the piping connections. We do have to get out to Birch Street, tie our new pump station into existing water main system. And we would go through that intersection, replace all the mains so that at a future project time, if you're gonna do Birch Avenue or 4th Street, which are 2 projects on your CIP, you would be able to connect into a brand new valve and not have to go back in and mess with the mains that we just put in. So there's a little bit of additional ancillary work related to that. So that's, I guess, generally the layout and location. So we're all kind of on the same page. And again, this is all buried in that big long report, but I didn't want to make you read every page of it, so.
One of the other things that came up is we're fairly certain that in the intersection of Fourth and Birch, there's a valve that's closed, that's kind of messing with the water model that was put together. In Moose Lake, as a general rule of thumb, I don't really let Phil touch valves, ever, unless we have a water break. So initially we thought that we would have to go check a few valves. I think we have it pretty well narrowed down, but this would allow us to really fix some irregularities that we also found in our water modeling that was put together. So frankly, this kind of fixes a couple problems that are by no means huge issues, but it's just kind of another thing that we can check off the box as we're moving through this
You
project.
very likely have a broken valve somewhere right in here, and we're gonna replace it, and hopefully take care of that problem at the same time. So, any questions with this general layout or how we got to this point?
The only other thing that I would add is we did have a couple conversations about moving the wells entirely from this area. We did not want to do that. We have good water quality and quantity where they are right now. If we were to move the wells, there would be additional costs for testing and things like that. But it also doesn't seem to make sense to move the wells when we know that we have a pretty good source of water right where we are at.
And buried in one of the appendices, if you really are curious in the report, we did preliminary work to look at where another aquifer might exist in your city and what the geology looks like. Again, you can't just go drill a well anywhere, so there is some information in there, but as Tim said, we know we have good water and good amount of water where we're at, so we didn't really want to go exploring other places in the city. And in addition, it would cost a lot more infrastructure to hook it back into the system, so.
Before you continue.
I have a quick question because I didn't read your packet or anything and I just rolled in here. Is that in that floodplain area that got flooded 2 years back? Physically?
No, it's up above, you know where the parking lot is, by the school?
Yep.
And there's a.
That's where the boat launch is at?
No, it's up above, it's on the high ground that did not go underwater.
The existing wells is here, the tennis courts, the access into the.
That was my question. If it went underwater,
It's on
what
the
we're
high
doing to
ground.
prevent that?
It
Because
did not
they
go
don't wanna
underwater.
that route.
And the
That
site,
was my
and
gist
the
of
site
it.
we're picking is a couple of feet higher even yet than.
I figured you'd looked at it, but from here, I might as well say something. Then my
Yeah.
other comment, you'd mentioned the shingled roof and stuff. Why would we put a shingled roof on that we're gonna have to replace in 10 years? Or 15 years when we're already counting pennies? Why aren't we putting a metal roof on like the rest of the residential houses? Pay an extra $100 or $200 for a metal roof and have to replace it in 50 years?
So final design has not started, we don't even have approval to move forward as of right now. The discussion, the mayor and Tim are part of our regular meetings, and this discussion was, we wanted to have the best residential feel. What does that mean? Shingles and siding, maybe a little bit of wainscot or something, you know, brick. on the
I was just
bottom,
thinking
but
maintenance
that was
free.
it.
Because we don't want to put more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It would definitely be more maintenance free. It just depends on what the council ultimately wants it to look like.
Thank you.
And we can go down that path a little bit. We can come back to that when we talk about our scope of services, if you choose to move forward with it. But that would be one of the steps, would be creating a couple of architectural renderings and picking, making some selections on what you want it to look like. Do you want it brick or siding, or, and we could certainly revisit the roofing materials at that time. But, the last piece of the recommended project then involves, once you drill new wells and have a new pumping facility, you don't need the old one anymore. So they need to go away as part of your wellhead protection plan. One of your best management practices is to make sure that all unused wells in your drinking water management area are sealed. So that sealing of those old wells 1 and 2 would be part of the project, and removing the pumping facility. So because that work, drilling wells, building a pump house and doing some other work it involves different contractors. We would propose bidding those as some separate projects, and we can get into more detail on that in a minute. There's one more related project that came up. Well, there's two more related projects listed, but the first one I want to talk about is the Old City Well House. So the discussion on the Old City Well House came into the discussion of this project because
This is the one on Douglas Avenue, by the way. if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
wondering, sorry.
Yep, thanks. It's by where the old water tower used to be. So the reason this came back into the conversation is because right now, all of your communications for your controls for the well and the water tower and how they communicate with each other go through that pump, through this old well house. And the discussions came up in that there are existing, that old well house is old and quite frankly needs to be abandoned at some point or repaired. And there's open exposed water main inside that building, in the basement of that building. So that building, really, it's really important that if you're going to keep that building, it needs to be maintained and heated forever, or you're going to have some serious issues with the water system. So the recommendation after going back and forth with the city staff was to get a price for doing that work, bid that as an alternate, and try to include that as a part of the work. And part of the project then would be to rewire the communication of your control system to go directly from your new wells to the water tower. So,
I think just also with that is, as Mark said, there's live water main in the basement. Not only would we be demoing the building, redoing the wiring, but we would go out on the street, take the loop out that goes through the building and just direct connect it in the street. So all of that pipe would be abandoned right there. And then alongside of it, there is a well that, according to what we could find and according to the Department of Health, was never actually abandoned, or at least abandoned appropriately. There is no documentation that it was. So part of what we're including now is assuming that it has not been, as we're going to take care of that. As Mark said, that's part of your wellhead protection plan, is if you got unused wells, they're supposed to be kept, so they don't pose any health risk to the public. So that'd be part of the project. I think the last ancillary project, as we're calling it, that has, I don't want to say has come up, but I presented maybe about a year ago, we did the inspection of your water tower back in late 18, and I think like January, February 19 or so, I was here and I kind of presented that. But basically, I don't expect you to remember that report, but what we found is the exterior of your tank is paint-wise getting a little chalky, a little dull, is not in need of a complete sandblast and redoing, but if you did an overcoat finish of it soon, you'll extend the life of that quite a bit. However, the interior of the tank, specifically the interior wet of the tank, is basically, it's already at the end of its useful life, and that would need a complete reconditioning of that. So in our meetings with city staff, with Tim and the mayor, they asked at this point for us to include that for your consideration as part of the overall project. If you're going to go for one big water project, would you consider that as part of it as well? So that is also included in the report that you would have there in front of you. So,
Sir,
Yes.
question. Is this the water tower reconditioning? Is that something that we could maybe talk to DOC? Because they have a water tower, and I mean, if they were doing something with their water tower at the same time, we might be able to utilize this.
absolutely, if they have any kind of plan to do something, it'd be nice to have one bid. If you got two projects, obviously, your unit prices are going to go down a little bit.
If I can add one thing to that one, actually, we have, while we talked about these projects together for funding any revenue bond that was issued would be tied together. This project is actually a little bit later in a timeline, so we would have a whole additional year to kind of coordinate with DOC about any project. So we would have plenty of time to do that one.
Thanks for the reminder, Tim. I guess we skipped the question you might be asking about the schedule. Assuming that the council wants to move forward with this project or a portion of this project, we would want to get started immediately with the new wells being the first bid package, getting that out on the street, getting it bid and getting wells in place. The well house itself would come after that, with the goal of having the building up and weatherproofed by this fall and having everything online by early next year, like May, June-ish of 2021, to have everything in service completely, and then have the summer of 2021, if you choose to do the water tower work, would happen then. Because we want to make sure Phil's had a couple of months to dial this new system in, make sure everything's working before you take your water tower out of service. So that would be the painting would be like a July, August, September type of 2021 if you choose to go with that.
So while we're on the topic of timing, the reason that these are tied together in this is the wells are obviously very expensive. The water tower is not incredibly expensive, but it's large enough that it's not going to be something that we're just going to budget for in a year, for instance. So either way, I would say that issuing a bond is the only way to pay for either of these two items. And if you're going to do that, you might as well tie them together and finance the projects together. The water tower is not going to last the 20 to 25 years that it would take to pay off this bond and then issue a new one for the water tower. So tying them together will just simply make it easier and save some administrative costs. So that's how these two projects really got tied together.
And I guess lastly on that, at the bottom there, number 6, project cost summary. Again, we have a little bit more detailed breakdown of construction costs in the report. At the city's request, I did provide a proposal for design and construction engineering services, which you probably have a copy of, but the quick summary here. So for the new wells, 2 new wells, to build the new well house, to abandon the old well house, to cap your old wells, then to go to the Douglas Avenue site, demo that building, redo the water main there, cap that well, and then address the PRVs in town, along with the design, bidding, and construction engineering services. You have about a $2.1 million project. The water tower rehab, about $450,000 between the improvements and the design, bidding, and construction engineering. Total around $2.6 million. The one thing I will note too, the $451,000, I really don't have much at all of contingency in there. I just did a tank in Hermantown that just finished. I know what the costs were. I dialed that one in. The 2.1 has about $300,000 of contingency left in it right now. I would hope that you would really only be bonding for 2.2 or 2.3. But when we're at this high level, I left that amount in there. I just to let everyone, I guess, be aware of what contingency we left in there.
So we have not done a rate study that would be associated with this. Do you want to talk about some of the timing of that stuff? Like what if they approve moving forward with this, when are we doing a rate study so that because there's a couple steps to approving this. What are we asking that they approve tonight?
Okay, so, well, we're here again to show you what these costs are. Assuming that you want to get the projects done in 2020, we would want to get approval to move forward with, and it's in our, if you have our proposal in front of you, it's what we're calling bid package 1. Bid package 1 is really getting the wells designed and getting that bid out to a well driller. And that, what do we say, about a 3-month about a 3-month process from the time we would start to the time you would hopefully have these wells drilled and know that we got good water and ready to go. The building itself, again, we would look for approval to move forward with I guess the whole project, but that would get us into probably an April or May time frame to have it ready for bidding, so that construction of that building could start. The big thing there is there's really long lead times for some of the equipment that goes into that building. So even though it's a small building, you might think, well, geez, I could put that up in a month. Usually these are 12 to 14 month long processes, which is why I'm saying spring of 2021, because of the electrical equipment that ends up in a building. And again, the water tower would be a later thing. So to your question, or to your point, Tim, we would be looking for approval of as much of the project as you want to approve, whether you want to include the ancillary projects or not, and then to start moving forward if you want these to be a 2020 construction project.
And the idea would be doing plans and specs for a pump house. It's a pretty complicated building for a small footprint building. There's electrical and mechanical and hydraulic design and chemical feed equipment. So there's a lot involved in that process and some public input of what do you want it to look like. So even though we may bid the well pumping facility after we bid the well, we bid the well first, we'd still want to start the design of the pumping facility right away to get that ready to bid.
Maybe to answer your question, Mark, March would be when we probably have detailed cost estimates to be able to come back to you with the more dialed in number. If you want to back that into a rate study as to what it would.
So.
That's what I was gonna bring up. As soon as you get your figures to us, we would want to start the rate study.
Yeah, I mean, you could start it with numbers right now, but like I said,
But there would still be a later date, say rates come back and throwing out just crazy number, utilities bills are gonna go up something ridiculous and they wanna stop. There would still be time later on to stop, is what I'm saying.
there's certainly going to be time to stop all construction for sure. Again, the well piece of it is the one that you want to get going right away. So might you be out with that? I mean, that would probably be the risk. Or we just don't put that out for bid and you just know that the project gets pushed a little bit further into 2021 for completion. But otherwise, I would say in March, we would have what I would call, 95% estimates done. The well stuff would potentially be able to bid, you know that cost, to be able to look at a rate study. But you could do a back of the hand one now, I'm sure, based on a $2.5 million project.
So I guess my last very, very large recommendation to the city council is this. If you guys want to hash out the water tower stuff at a later date, that sounds fine. I think that it's necessary to include that with the bond. I don't see any other way that it's going to get done. But the well house and the wells that we have, they say that they're reaching the end of their useful life. Those things are not meant to go, at least one of them's not meant to go as long as it has, and the second one is certainly getting there quick. This one's not so much a matter of if it needs to get done, it 100% needs to get done. The building that is existing, there is a potential to save some amount of money, and it would be very small, to rehab that building. It would be a huge pain in the butt. It would still need to be expanded for any additional chemicals needed. And quite frankly, that building is awful. So I would certainly suggest that the way that the project is presented here has taken a very long time to whittle down. And I would certainly recommend moving forward with what's presented here.
So we're at the point of opening it up for discussion by the council.
We're talking about years of service. We have a 74 and a 65-year-old wells, just so the public knows what is the years of service. I know that they can go at any time. We're still getting the 400 gallons or whatever they need.
Yeah, it's hard to, if you were to ask me a rule of thumb for one that we installed today, I would say 60 years, 50, 60 years. Like I said, city staff has been hiring a well contractor to come in and televise the wells, and to look at them regularly, so they're still there. So,
But we know that your well contractors also advise the screen and a few of the other things.
Yeah,
need to be-
that's a good point.
That, I guess it's
That's a
kind of
good
one of the
point,
reasons this
because
project got started.
You mentioned the capacity, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, one of the wells, the capacity had been dropping a little bit, and the well contractor noticed that there are some problems with the screen plugging up, so the well contractor recommended pretty aggressive well rehabilitation, screen rehab and well rehab. So,
And I think one of the things that's important to note with that too is that this idea, this concept did not come from SEH. Bolton and Mink is technically the ones that put together the full review of the infrastructure, which we tried and succeeded in following some suggested years. This one we knew was a little bit bigger and needed a longer review. I think this one was supposed to get done last year according to their study, but this is now I would say we're 2 engineers deep, a couple city administrators, and we're all pointing towards this for sure needs to get done.
I think there's no guarantee if the existing wells are rehabbed, how long they would last, or even if the rehab would solve the problems we're having. That's a big issue there, and to rehab them was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, all that consideration went into it.
Yeah, that was my question, is how much about would rehab cost? I mean.
Well, you're talking about
Half of
two
this?
different things. Rehabbing the wells would need to happen, and then rehabbing the building
Yeah,
wells would need to
so
happen.
would that be approximately half of the cost of the new, or?
No, we looked at that in some level of detail here. This was discussed with the group. Only about $200,000-ish less.
Than the entire project?
Well, taking the water tower
Yeah.
out. Yes.
So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Because you have to remember, I mean, tearing down the Douglas
Mhm.
water tower, that doesn't have anything to do with whether we rehab or not. Any work with the PRVs that are through town, all of that doesn't have anything to do with it. So there's quite a bit of work that's outside of just a well house.
Yeah, the wells themselves would be cheaper to rehab. The well house is not, I mean, to go build a brand new building, a brand new site versus having to rehab that whole thing, work around it, make temporary connections, that doesn't save any money there at all. So that's the difference. I guess as far, Tim, as the board tonight, I mean, I have that funding summary in there. The proposal that you also have from us, Tim had asked us to look at design and construction services. We made our best estimate of construction services. Those are things that, once you get a contractor, you get a schedule submitted, we want to sit down with you and revise that. So you'll see in our fee estimate for tasks 1 through 4, it's a big number at $340,000, but I also would say if you're going to go through with that, once you get to construction, we stop right there and say, all right, let's look at what the contractor's schedule is actually going to do, what the scope is, and do we need to revise that number? Because as we've done on other things, is, we're only going to bill what we need on the construction side of things. I know the water tower is broken out total construction. If you're wondering, for our fees, we had $76,000 for pre-design, design bidding, and all construction and permitting for the water tower. So if you're looking at it in terms of what you would be committing to tonight, it would either be $340,600, or that plus the $76,000, or something less if you choose to reduce the scope. And then again, construction dollars you wouldn't have to spend until you are comfortable moving forward with the project. And we'd shoot for in March having real detailed estimates to give to you.
Tim, what action are we looking at? Because the council's very clear on it for right now tonight.
Well, I guess my recommendation is one that I'm not sure how comfortable you are with this. I have a different opinion, and Phil does as well, because we've sat through like 2.5 years worth of meetings on this thing. I would recommend moving forward with all of these projects. They're not like to do projects. They are have to do projects. The cost of the projects, whether we like them or not, is not going to come from SEH, quite frankly. We're going to approve basically them going out for bid and kind of narrowing it down. So I don't really see what other option there is right now. If you don't do it now, it'll come up next year, and it'll come up the year after, until finally something breaks and it's kind of a disaster. So I think that the city needs to move forward with this.
I think one of the things that came up too, and this was all presented about a year ago, if I remember, with the different options. Was it a year ago or 2 years ago? 2? I know.
Well, you would have a presentation from your previous firm.
Yeah, I remember all these options that came up.
2016.
So in 2016 or 15,
And I
you
think
would have had it.
Phil brought up that the electronic part, if certain things break in it, they're not available anymore.
That's in my notes here, we have in case there was questions.
And
There
we're
is
already
here.
2 years down the road from when you mentioned it then, that there isn't backup for it.
Correct.
So I know that there's a lot more to it than just the wells, it's also the control panel. And they're not cheap, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
I should say, just so he doesn't go back and feel bad that I made him do a bunch of extra work. I did ask that Phil present maybe some thoughts and ideas on some of these projects. Do you want to?
They have all been touched on.
Okay.
They have all, other than honestly cleaning up this old water tower, building in this pump house over here, that all should have been done when the original project was taken care of. This is all just a mess that has not been cleaned up. And it's very rude to say, but it's the truth. It should have been cleaned up from the beginning.
This building up here where the old water tower was, no, that has to be updated, you're saying, or no?
Torn down.
Torn down, and so there would be nothing left up on that land that's being utilized in the well?
Unless we put a cabinet with the siren, because the siren's gotta go somewhere.
The intent was the siren would remain as is. We put a freestanding new electrical panel alongside the siren. The building goes away, the piping in the basement gets abandoned, and you just fill it back up and plant grass until you decide what you want to do with it, and you'll have a capped well adjacent to where the old buildings do.
The only other piece of that is currently the DNR is using your old well as an observation well. And
Is that why the tag's on there?
that's why that tag's on there. So
Uh,
as part of our proposed scope was to have the discussions with the DNR and say, you need this thing, does it have to be here? Or can the city repurpose this piece of property for some other use? Or can we move that, or I should say, can you move your observation well somewhere else?
And the question of whether that will pay is part of what we want to look at too, now that we know what it is, which we honestly just found out about 2 days ago.
Well, it would be nice if we could free up that land up there and be able to use it for something else,
the city, whether it's parking or who knows what the city could come up with for ideas to use it for, but hopefully it's going to stay.
We were honestly surprised that it was still there. Phil gave us a tour and to see the amount of live water being in the basement. That thing is somewhat of a liability for you. It's got to be maintained. And the building around it's all got to be maintained.
Phil really wants that building.
Well, and heat it. I mean, you got to heat it. You're heating 6 months right now.
So, council, any discussion or action?
What is the, okay, say we postpone for a year, what are your estimates on the percentage of the increase in expense?
Well, the quick answer would be, what's your cost of living expense every year? About 3%.
So,
So,
I mean, right, I mean, this is what we're saying, that looking at this,
yep.
we probably don't have an option then whether it's gonna get done or not, but when.
Absolutely, Tim already said that.
Yes.
You're past when your previous engineer said you should have this done. We're picking up from there. But if you just use the simple math at 3% a year, you can project out, if you wanted to wait 5 years, how much more you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to suddenly get cheaper.
I think the other thing is you have decently favorable bonding rates right now. Yep, that's the other piece of that is what you're gonna pay in interest.
And I'm not trying to oversell or scare anybody or anything, but overstate things, but the other risk you run of delaying it is if something breaks. Once you decide which direction you want to go, once you decide you want to move new, my advice would be to move new sooner rather than later, because any money that Phil has to spend on the old facilities until the new ones get built is just going to get thrown away. So.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think it's a council discussion.
Well, I think we need to move on this, and it's not going to get cheaper, and we'll put it off long enough. So I'll make a motion that we approve the wells 1 and 2 rehab as presented.
Do you, just for the record, do you now want to do the?
Oh, yes, with the water tower rehab included,
Okay.
bonding.
Okay.
That cover?
That covers, we need a second.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Open for any further questions?
My biggest concern is that we still have this INI issue that I think that we need to move rapidly on, which is going to hinder us from getting any more new construction as well. So we have a lot of different things with our street projects as well as this. So there is no good place to start, but I understand we have to do this. But I just want people to understand that we have a project here that somebody needs done. We have streets that haven't been touched in 40 years, and it's not getting any better.
And I guess that's the problem, we've run into is we always put it off, and now we're at the point where we have all the stuff that it's been put off for so long, and we're sitting here, how do we fix it all, It's,
And it's unfortunate,
Unfortunate.
Past counselors for the past 40, 50 years have put things off, and we're at the point now where this has reached its kind of their lifetime, and so we're faced with these big decisions, unfortunately.
Well, the technology discussion earlier tonight was the exact same thing. We put that off to the point where now we can't even find equipment
Replacement.
to replace it with. It's the same, it's always the same.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for my 5 cents here, but I think you should do it because you're moving forward, and that's my point here. It's rather embarrassing to have the campground have to be turned into the health service. Do we want to be another Flint? Michigan, because you have one contaminated well, and we're back to Flint, Michigan. I like to drink water here.
What are they frozen?
And it's not frozen. So that's my 2 cents to it.
Thank you for that support.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
From me, I guess I would just like to thank you guys. That was a couple different projects tied into, you know, a couple different studies, a couple different projects, and about 2 years worth of work. So I know it's not done, but well, I think a lot of time with Phil and you guys was well spent. I think that this is extremely well planned out and as well planned out as we could get it. So I'm excited for Moose Lake to be moving forward with that one.
Yeah, and I would just also say, I really appreciate that your staff has taken the time to set up monthly meetings with us. It helps what we do for you immensely to have a regular scheduled time. We come in with a list of 20 questions every single month. We let them know kind of ahead of time what's coming. It's been a very efficient way to have this back and forth so that we can provide the best product in the most efficient way. So thanks for allowing your staff to do that with us.
Thank you. Just something for the council is we go on with our administrator leaving, and we don't know the schedule when we will have an administrator here. I would like one person on the street department to meet with Katie and I and the engineers when they come once a month, just to be part of that discussion. And then it comes back to the council here. Is there someone that would step forward with those meetings?
And generally, they're the first Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. Tuesday or Wednesday at 9 a.m.
Okay.
I do understand a certain percentage of construction.
All right. Well, Katie, just a reminder, we'll keep Greg informed as we be at the meeting. Thank you. Moving on to new business, 7A, Moose Lake Area Historical Society request for equipment.
The Historical Society is requesting to basically just take our wireless microphone system. First, I didn't even know that we had one. Second, I really don't like it when city councils use wireless mics. I have never seen a city council be able to use one successfully. These ones always work better, even if people don't like them. They just always sound better and work better. And third, apparently they're just sitting in there and they'd like to use them for when they have plays and things like that. It's easier for people that are walking around. This makes perfect sense to give these to them. We're not using them.
I could tell the reason why we stopped using them.
They didn't work. I remember from different people complaining.
Yep.
Right.
They never work right.
And the ones that really worked right, they heard noises that they shouldn't hear. So it was better that we went back to these, and you're right.
There's actually a YouTube video of a counselor that got up and left and went to the restroom with his on, so there you go.
I know.
And be careful with the wireless mics.
So this just wouldn't be used for the Historical Society. If there's any other group that's going up there that's renting or
Sure,
using
yeah.
the building, they could use it as well. This
I
would be
would,
just
yeah.
lock and key.
Right, this is the idea, but being able to help actually the historical society to be able to get that building used more.
Sure.
It would be just one more tool. And see, it still belongs to the city.
Do you want a motion on this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion with the understanding that this is not just used for the Historical Society, it's for anybody else that goes up there or anybody else that is renting that building or using that building. It's not just done by the Historical Society.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You know, gentlemen, if you want to leave, you certainly can. And your business is done. There is no other things we need them for further on.
Okay, well, thank you. I was just gonna mention, Tim, one thing, I don't know what the Active Living Coalition or group is. Does
You want
that,
to add it?
no, does it have anything to do when we did the Safe Routes to School?
That's what I was asking.
Application, there was something that said the city was committed to and did create some type of committee or coalition. I don't know if you were required to create that based on previous monies or things that you did, so I just wanted to remind you of that you
Yeah,
might
so-
want to check that before you.
Yeah,
just
my
ban
only
that.
thought was that maybe that was created, because there was a Safe Routes to School plan that was created 4 or 5 years ago. It might have been created with that, but you can just
Yeah.
leave it on there.
I don't know, it
It's
said
like
that you had to meet, but there might have been a requirement that you could have one set up,
Okay.
because we did report that when we got that grant, that
Okay.
we did have something, I don't know if it was.
You know, it may have been something to do with that Fit City initiative that came on.
Yes,
6,
that's
7
what I
years
mean, you
ago.
might
I
want to
know-
check that before you get rid of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll quit causing you more headaches.
Now you got it coming.
Moving on to 2B temporary alcohol permit, Moose Lake Brewing Company.
This is for ice bocce for the chamber event, so I would recommend.
Do we have a motion from the council?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Under 2C, 2020 F-350 truck purchase state bid.
You just hop in, let the minute that we bring up the new truck, you just got, no. In our capital budget for 2020 was a new pickup truck for the Public Works Department. This would be the third and final truck that needed to be replaced in that department. Currently, he's still running around with a very, very old Dodge pickup, so this would be the third and final one to get that done.
Who's that bid in?
Page
So we're
40.
not getting this truck, is what I'm saying? You say?
Yeah, I would never purchase this truck if I were, oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
Phil.
I missed.
I was up there for like
30 seconds. And then money's in the budget, basically?
Yes, we budgeted for this pickup, yep.
It's on page 42.
And I'm sorry, this is also state bid, which is why there's only one quote.
Motion by the council?
purchase,
That was a yes.
that'd be a
Do
purchase.
we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Under 7D, Spark Skate Sharpener quote.
Okay, so first, this was in the budget. It was budgeted for $2,000. This is $2,600. The reason that there's only one bid is because they're not comparable. This is a certain kind of skate sharpener. The reason why this one is more expensive than what we budgeted for is because this is like a much more, say, commercial version of the skate sharpener we currently have. We bought a skate sharpener 3 or 4 years ago, and already it doesn't work. We bought one that cost maybe $1,000, and you can tell that it's just not robust enough to do what we need to do. So I would recommend that we purchase this one. Our current one is already broken, like I said. So
Out of curiosity, do they charge?
yes, we do. We make money out of skate sharpening.
Motion by the council.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Skip to that.
Moving on to 7E. Skip that for now. Then moving on to 7F. And this is the police. I'm going to read my own writing here.
Committee. What do you want to continue to have?
Okay. Leave that to the council. It was brought up when we were selecting the different members for the committees, the question, do we need to keep the police committee? Police liaison, however you want to state it.
I was just gonna say, in the last probably 4 or 5 years, there's never been a meeting. They typically talk to the city administrator, so I guess I don't know what the need is to have that.
So I will say that normally with the police, there's a civil service commission, which has, it's kind of like the planning commission, where it has a very specific outline on what they're there for. If there's any question about this, I would suggest that maybe the city move to a police civil service commission, and basically research what those ones are for. Those are a couple members from the public. It ties the public and a city councilor as representatives to meet at designated times. It's very similar to like an economic development authority or a planning commission, where there's outlines on what they do.
Council?
We could leave it this year, and maybe Katie can check into that for next year.
I think that's a great thing. I will say the other thing with a civil service commission is generally, at least in my experience, they are better utilized in a larger community than they are a smaller community. In a smaller community, a lot of what the civil service commission might do would fall onto the personnel committee. It's more of your discipline, grievance, procedural steps have to do with civil service commissions, which I don't know that is necessary here. So it's just something to look into.
Very good. Do we have consensus? Very good, thank you. Moving on to 7G, Living Coalition, it sounds like we're gonna look into it, so that's pretty much
Might as well just leave it for this year.
covered, yeah. That brings us to the City Council, City of Moose Lake will meet in closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute, Section 13D.05, Sub 2A, to have a personnel discussion. This meeting will take place in the council chambers of the community center at 313 Elm Avenue. So we will be closing.
Yeah, you make a motion.
We have to have a motion to close the open session. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Opposed, and we will reconvene.
Yeah, we'll head into the conference room. Katie's got bills for that.
We're out. I think everybody's here, so we need a motion to end the closed meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're now closed and we're back into the regular session. I want to, point of order here, and something I realized, we don't have an item on discussion on the city administrator process.
We did have a special meeting.
We are, but we were gonna look at the costs.
I don't have it yet.
Okay, so we just start waiting,
Yeah.
and it won't come to you anyway.
Did Sherry talk to you?
No?
Oh, I gave her your phone number, so if she doesn't get it to me by Friday, she will contact you regarding it.
I saw for Katie.
No, I gave it
Okay.
to you.
Okay.
He's deleting our numbers right now.
Right, yeah, just currently.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Um,
Do you want to do break?
Huh?
We gotta do the letter.
You wanted to do prices.
Prices.
Oh, I'll make a motion to accept Bryce's, resignation letter.
Just say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Go through announcements real quick. Regular Moose Lake City Council meeting Wednesday, February 12th, 4 p.m. Right here, Moose Lake Economic Development Authority, Wednesday, February 12th, 12 p.m. in the conference room. Moose Lake Water and Light Commission regular meeting Tuesday, January 21st, 3 p.m. Water and Light Office. Moose Lake Housing Redevelopment Authority Board, January 13th, 2020, 11 a.m. at the Hillside Manor Office. Moose Lake Area Fire District, Tuesday, January 14th, 6:30 p.m. Emergency Response Center. Moose Lake Park Board meeting, Monday, February 3rd, 6:30 p.m. right here. Library Board meeting, January 13th, 1 p.m. City Conference Room.
Chamber, is the chamber under chamber tomorrow at Chickadee,
Okay. At noon.
at noon?
Thank you.
And I have no idea if those dates are actually correct, aside from like our stuff, because I don't know the fire district. I have to get their schedule. I've just followed what you did. You were on a lot, so.
Very good.
I've never been wrong.
Okay.
Now we can do this.
That'd be a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.